welcome back to Wilderness Fun. We're out here at the Trapper's Cabin. Shout out to Big J for letting me use his tech again. I got an order to make a cane for someone that has muscle sclerosis. Now, first off, I'm going to teach you how to taste the wood. Close, but not quite. Yeah? Tastes like mulberry. Now, on a serious note, I chose this one because it's got a natural handle that I can work with. It's thick enough that it can hold the weight of the client. And, best of all, it's mulberry, like I said. A wood I know how to work pretty much blindfolded. Now, come on in, we're gonna have some fun. Hey, we're in the Trapper's Cabin. Now, as you can tell, this is a pretty gnarly branch. What are your thoughts, Big J?
It's pretty gnarly, but it sounds like you got a pretty good plan.
Oh yeah. First off, we gotta get these little twigs taken care of. Normally, you would want to use a pocket knife that's got a nice edge, a small hatchet, and I mean small hatchet, or wire cutters or reinforced scissors would work. But I've got a double-edged chisel, and all I'm going to do, start with that. And as you can tell, knocks them right off. And I'm doing this to get as much smoothness when I start to remove the bark as possible, because that's where the beauty is. This wood will actually have a slight purple hue, but when you heat treat it, or fire harden as the proper term would be, it'll keep its white hue with a tint of yellow brown to a dark brown and tint of black if it gets too hot. It's a very beautiful wood, harder than oak, but at half the weight. So, any questions so far? Nah? So, fun fact about mulberry. It is an invasive tree. No one really likes them except mulberry farmers. They're like a cockroach. The only way to really kill them is to drill a hole, gasoline, and fire. The other way, about 10 pounds of tannerite. Those are the only two proven methods I know of. They're, like I said, they're like cockroaches. This particular branch came from a tree that we drilled and tapped twice with gas, and it still survived. So, and Big J, how hard are roaches to get rid of?
Roaches are hard to get rid of. Definitely hard to get rid of.
So now we're getting to a point where I can kind of start to show you how I skin this. Now, ideally, I would use a planing blade or a nice flat knife, but I don't feel like doing that today. I'm just wanting to see if there's any tree worms. You ever heard of those? Tree worms?
I haven't.
So a tree worm is like a termite, but it bores a little hole into the wood and will ruin the structural integrity. And bowyers, people that would make bows, would be making the bow out of osage, oak, hickory, and they would actually have to start the whole project over because of one little hole that these worms make. Because let's, for example, say the little hole was right here. It might be a shallow hole, but what you don't realize is it travels like a snake all the way down.
Really?
Yeah.
So you said that sometimes you'd use like a knife or something like that. What's your, like, what do you normally do here to get all that bark off? Do you usually skin it like you're doing there, or do you like try to get under the bark and pry it off of there?
If it's green, it's easier to skin because I can just pop it off. But I've been letting this age for some time, so it's nice and dry and it's just flaky. Makes really good kindling for fire starter. That's a very good question. But normally I would try to pop it in sections while it's green, but since it's so dry, I can just scrape it, and that will save a little bit of time on the next step. Now, this don't look pretty at the moment, but Big J, if you'll show another cane that I'm working on real quick over here, I'll grab it for you. This cane has a 3000 grit finish. It is smoother than a baby's rear end.
Really? Let's get that close up of that one there.
And you can see just how beautiful this wood is when you treat it with respect, and that's what it comes down to. Respecting nature, respecting the tools.
And when you get that other one kind of skinned up, that's what it's going to start to look like, and then you work
a little
it
bit,
down.
yeah. So at first, you're going to see like this gnarly brown yellow. That is not good wood. That's like rot or infection in a case. So I'm just grabbing something here to kind of speed us along. If I can remember where I put things. Part of being a genius is you're scatterbrained and you throw things around and can't remember where you put them. So, and literally, Big J, how often do I throw things around in my shop?
More often than I would like, I would say.
Yeah, you said I need that warning sign that says beware flying tools.
Yes.
Yes. It is true, folks. I do have a tendency of using a monkey wrench and then becomes a UFO. Just because it's in my way. Well, where did I put the planer?
Looks like you found it. So what do we got here, James?
This is an antique planer that the handles broke off of. I've repurposed the edge because it was all dinged up. I've still got to work on these handles because you would hold it traditionally at a really weird angle. It's more comfortable if you hold it like this and pull towards you instead of, well, whatever this was and this. But what I like to do is just work it in small sections. And as you can tell, we're getting down to that good wood.
Oh yeah, that looks nice.
Now, if you can feel the difference between the rot and the good wood.
Oh yeah, big difference.
Right. And as I'm scraping, I'm looking for that woodworm hole. Those are a no-no.
And what you're working on right now is the bottom, right?
Would be, yes. Okay. I always start bottom because that's where the structural integrity of this branch would have been connected to a tree. Traditionally, you would normally start like with the handle, cutting everything off, and then blah, blah, blah. I'm doing it backwards because that's what works for me, but it may not work for you. You gotta find what works. Now, with a planing blade or a draw blade like this, you cannot go away from you. And what your daddy always say about a knife?
Cut away from you.
Right. Well, with these will make you have to get stitches. So, what I like to do, find that sweet angle, something about like this, so that handle's locked in there with some form of support. Cross my ankle like that, lock it in, and just come down to that knot right there. Don't cut it off yet, because that is keeping this thumb from going bye-bye. Remember, caveman said safety third. Modern man say safety what number?
First.
So, and as we work on this, it's a slow project. This could take anywhere between 6 to 12 hours.
Just for the bark part?
Yeah,
Okay.
just to get all the rot, make sure there's no inclusions, interior cracking from the weather. There are beetles that will damage the wood. Termites, you've heard of them. They like wood and they will leave scarring. The woodworm, again, I can't emphasize that enough. Actually, I think I have a piece laying around here that has damage from a woodworm, or did I throw it out? If I come across some woodworm damage, I'll show you. But typically, woodworms aren't that big. They're about the size of a fishing grub. And about the same color, but highly invasive to your trees. So, the woodpecker, when you hear him hammering, that's what he's going after, is them termites, the woodworms, them, I can't remember the name of the beetle that damages trees.
Emerald ash borer.
Thank you. That's what the woodpeckers are having a buffet of. So, in a way, a woodpecker is a carpenter's best friend. But yet, we carpenters loathe them. Because them big old holes is really hard to work around. They're not the best sculptors.
No, they're not.
So, I'm just cleaning up this little spot. And like I said, you don't need something this big and heavy. Does it make it easier? Yes. If I had a big old vice grip at a angle, would that make this easier? Absolutely. But I'm not to that point yet, so I'm using what works. And you gotta remember, way back when, our ancestors would use stone to scrape these branches. And I had Big J, actually a little while back, he came over just for a visit, and he was enlightened at how hard it is to use stone.
Sure was. If we found a piece of stone out here, do you think you could demonstrate a little bit?
Yeah, I will happily demonstrate.
All right.
We'll get back with you in a minute. Ah, you found my shard collection, I see, Big J.
I did.
We have right here another piece of mulberry. I use this to practice on. And this ring right here where this gnarly crack is, that's your heartwood. So if you get a crack running into your heartwood, that's like a bad artery for your heart. So kids, this is what the tree used to be. And as it grows, it just gets wider and wider. One too many donuts. And no exercise kind of deal. So remember, veggies and fruit. Oh, and lots of jerky. But in all seriousness, the heartwood is what we would call the center. And it is said that you can count the rings of a tree to know how many dry seasons and wet seasons there are. With this one, I cannot because it was so young. But I've seen trees that had 500, 600 rings just on the stump.
That's an old tree.
That is an old tree. But yes. Now, the fun thing about heartwood, though, is it's still pretty solid. You would expect it to be squishy because of the word heart. Now, the second reason it's called heartwood is, imagine this being the tree itself. So this part is in the ground and there's a bunch of fingers like roots coming out like this. So my hands are one path of the roots. Those roots are going to pull nutrients into the bottom of the heart here and go up the trunk and into the branches. Now, as a carpenter, we like heartwood because it's very desirable. It makes those nice rings, like on the back of Big J's phone. It's got that nice heartwood ring on it. I love that design. Even your wood paneling in my shop, it has that heartwood design where you can count the rings and whatnot. So, grain, that's the word I'm looking for. So, heartwood gives you your grain. What I'm getting at, kids and parents, is some sticks may look like they make really good canes, walking sticks, but until you get working with them, they just don't know. Now, let's talk about types of wood. Big J, have you ever heard of poison oak?
Yeah, but it's not the oak that we think about, right?
Correct. It is mistaken at times by kids or people who don't recognize it because it does look like an oak tree. But hence the term poison oak. So the difference with oak and poison oak, what's one big difference you would give the kids and parents, Big J?
Poison oak grows like a vine, like poison ivy.
Correct.
It's not a tree.
It is not a tree, but the reason it's called poison oak is it's associated with oak trees, most commonly. However, I have seen it on maples. I have seen it on cedars, but it is a vine, and it can put you in the hospital. So if you think you've come across it, ivory soap and a good lather. How would you remove it?
Bleach.
Oh, no.
Bleach.
No. That will damage your skin. You use ivory soap, actually. Or lye soap will work. Anything with lye or the ivory soap, not the brand Ivory, but I'm talking, you know what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. Now, poison ivy, how would you identify it?
Leaves of 3, leave it be.
Leaves of 3, leave be, and they're kind of shiny. So, same thing with poison oak. It's got them shiny leaves, and that shine isn't for their wealth. It's the oil Now, mulberry, is it edible? Big J?
The wood or the berry?
The berry.
The berry, yeah, I eat the berries all the time.
And they're good.
They're good.
Ever had mulberry syrup?
No.
Oh, that is some good stuff.
We made mulberry jam last year, but it didn't turn out.
Okay, you got to tell me how with that.
It was okay. It didn't turn out very well.
Mulberry is very hard to preserve because of its moisture content. But our ancestors quickly learned to follow the birds. Because birds eat a lot of berries, worms, bugs, and whatnot. However, can we eat everything a bird eats?
No.
No. So how did our ancestors learn what was edible, what wasn't?
Somebody had to die.
Say that a little louder for me,
I
please.
mean, somebody had to die from it. Or puke.
Right.
Or get really bad diarrhea.
Yep. Someone was given the porcelain god tribute. Yep. And like I said, kids and parents, we're all about being kooky, not too serious. But in all seriousness, our ancestors learned what was edible and what wasn't. Trial and tribulation, watching nature, and foraging. I mean, you come across the glowing mushroom in today's society, Big J's walking away. Me? I'm going to study it. Who knows? Maybe it'll give me superhuman strength or a really bad trip.
Or do my method. If it looks good, make JJ try it first.
Oh, how I love you too. How I love you too. So let's talk about some safety tips when it comes to just collecting wood. Because a lot of people just pick up wood and, go to town on it. But there is a method. So right behind you, Big J, are some samples of wood I have laid out. Your left shoulder, if you please, right by the door. Yeah, that one. Perfect. So when I say wood safety, I'm not talking like glasses or anything, but you want to look at it on the outside and see if there's any rot that is visible to the naked eye. If there is rot visible to the naked eye, it goes in the burn pile or compost. Always give back to the earth. I am not a green fanatic. I'm just saying wood is high in nutrients that the ground needs. And by burning it, you're actually enriching the nutrients. So your grandpa's fire pit, your daddy's fire pit, take that and start a compost pile, and you'll actually make fertilizer for your mama's garden. So give back what you take. It's how our ancestors lived. Now this, Big J, would you say it's got any rot? Visually speaking.
Standing from here, I can't see that. I can't see any rot.
Okay, right. And you've been hiking and you've seen some logs. You know what I'm talking about. You can see where there's chunks missing and it just looks like sawdust. That's what we're looking for. So visually speaking, you cannot see any rot. So that's check one. Okay. Now, number two, does it bend very easy? No. No. Okay. Check two. Three, is it a poisonous wood? Mulberry is not poisonous. I want to get that out there. It is actually a very fun wood to work with once you learn how to work it. It's got a lot of knots, but it makes some beautiful furniture, canes, walking sticks, even bows. It's actually a relative of Osage, Big J.
Oh, really?
Yep. Our ancestors worked Osage because it was a light wood, but reliable. Mulberry being that relative, it would make sense that Native Americans of old would have used mulberry, hickory, or whatever was available. So, to recap, how do we identify woodworms? You look for sawdust as you're scraping. small pitty trails. Termites, that's a whole nother nightmare. They just leave holes. Wood safety, again, if you don't know what the wood is, ask a parent, and they can generally ID the wood. There's hundreds of ways to identify something online now. There's these gurus that study trees for a living, so they can tell you what type it is based on the bark, the color of the wood, the leaf, down to the types of bugs that like to live on it. So, for you bug collectors, yes, bugs do prefer certain types of trees over others. Now, since we're talking about bugs and the ecosystem, what comes with bugs, Big J? The one thing you hate.
Bats.
Bats. Yes. But they are a necessity to the ecosystem. When they get in your house, I believe that's a violation of the Right to Privacy and Home Invasion Act.
That's how I feel about it.
But in all seriousness, wood is a highly essential commodity. Now, did you know wood cannot conduct electricity, Big J?
I did know that, yes. It's a very, very poor conductor.
Yes. Now, another fun fact about mulberry, and I'll leave you with this, is mulberry, like I said, is invasive, but there are different types of mulberry. There's black mulberry, red mulberry, and my mulberry that I get is wild. I didn't plant them. And when I say invasive, I'm talking like a bird went somewhere, ate the berries, and did a nice number 2 in our yard. And the seeds come out with that fertilizer and they sprout. Now, the other reason they're invasive is they will kill your other trees that are in the area because they just get so big. So, with that, it's been a fun educational moment here in the Trapper's Cabin. Big J, got anything to say?
I don't. I'm just excited to see some of that finished product here in the next
couple
days or something.
Before we close out, I'll give you guys a little bonus here because you're such a good audience. And this cane, like I said, is a 3,000 grit finish. And this right here was a knot. And you can work around those. You can sand them till they're flat. But I like them looking natural. It's kind of that rugged look. But let's see if I can find any blemishes here. This one I was blessed. We got a little worm trail right there. Like where it started. And when you're working with the wood, you want to go with the grain, but when it's round, you want to work it kind of back and forth. And having my first power sander saved me about 72 hours. Think about that, Big J.
It's days.
Yeah. Because I'm very, very meticulous when it comes to canes. I like them to be sturdy, in case the person trips or something. They can hold their weight, but also look professional. It's a business. Would you sell something that had a crack in it?
No.
Yeah, no. Now, this blemish, it's natural, and those are almost impossible to get out. Yeah, I could take putty and fill it in, blah, blah, blah. But that takes away from that rustic beauty of the wood. And what I want to say to you kids that want to start trying primitive crafts is start with a walking stick. Now, whatever your height, make sure you have parental supervision, unless you're of legal age, blah, blah, blah. But for me, this is the perfect height for a walking stick. Right about here. And that's because, A, if I start to trip, I can just lean and this will catch me. But if you're like 6 foot tall, it's going to be higher. If you're shorter, you want to measure a few inches above your waist to about mid-belly, we'll say. And make sure before you start cleaning it that it is comfortable to hold. That's a biggie. If it's not comfy, you ain't going to use it. So this has been the bonus. Big J, any closing questions or comments?
I don't think so. I think we're good.
We're good?
I think in really explaining how to pick a good height is a good idea.
Oh, yeah. Even with canes, it's so important. And how many types of canes are out there, Big J?
Oh, multiple. I mean, I can't even count, probably.
I've seen a cane that turns into a walker.
Walker.
Yeah. Like, so it's a cane, right? But it folds like a cane, but in a moment's notice, it unfolds into a stabilized walker that a granny would use.
Oh, really? Can you do one of those?
It would be heavy, and it's a lot of moving parts. Could I build it? Highly possible. It would be very, very sophisticated. Maybe down the road. Now, Big J, what's this I hear about so many subscribers I get a pie to the face?
Oh, yeah, we got to pick a number. Once we get to how many, what were we thinking?
We'll say for the first one, Big J?
25.
Okay.
25 subscribers. JJ's taking a pie.
To the face.
To the face. I like it. So like, subscribe, hit the thumbs up button, right?
Oh, yes.
And the bell. Isn't there a bell?
I believe so.
Okay.
But the caveman might come running, or Sasquatch. Speaking of, have you seen Sasquatch?
I haven't, but if we do, he's jerky.
Stay tuned.